The first time Captain Mira Leland saw the asteroid belt of Iota Persei, she thought of graveyards. Half lit by a sullen orange star, the stones resembled blackened teeth drifting in velvet void, mute witnesses to a violence older than charts. Her battered colony ship Ardent Dawn limped toward them on sputtering fusion exhaust, hull plates peeled back like the rind of a fruit left for carrion. The pirate ambush at Kepler's Gate had shredded every escort, vented half the agricultural holds, and left 200 settlers sealed behind bulkheads that smelled of burnt insulation and fear. The pirates, of course, were not finished. Commodore Sarn's flotilla of lean Corsair corvettes and retrofitted gunboats waited at the system's inner rim, blocking the only FTL slipstream out. They wanted Ardent Dawn boarded, stripped, its passengers sold on the dark exchanges that thrived beyond the Colonial Accord's reach. Mira needed a hiding place, somewhere to mend life support, maybe coax another light year from failing engines, maybe send a last message. The belt was all she had. Ardent Dawn threaded the outer knots of rock and ice, guided more by instinct than by what passed for sensors. Behind Mira on the bridge, holograms flickered, occasionally dissolving into static as radiation spikes danced across the ship's scarred skin. Chief Engineer Luis Okoro floated near a torn access panel, datapad tethered to his waist. Blood trickled from a cut above his brow, curling into coppery spheres. "Reactor stress is climbing," he said, voice steady though he knew it was close to rupture. "The superconductor grid's misaligned. If we don't vent, we'll cook ourselves." "Can we mask the vent in the belt's background radiation?" Mira asked. "Maybe, but we'll light up like a flare on pirate scopes if they're even half awake." "They're more than half awake," First Officer Jin Serrano muttered. "But we're out of alternatives." Mira gave the order. Plasma valves snapped open, and a million-degree spill of ions bled invisibly into dark space. The pirates would notice soon. Yet as the cloud drifted through the belt, something other than enemy sensors paid attention. Deep inside an asteroid 3 kilometers wide, cataloged in antique surveys as 9 psi 142, things began to move. They were older than humanity's first orbital flight, perhaps older than humanity. For millennia, the microscopic machines had slept. Power cores wound down to a quantum trickle, clustered like metallic pollen against carbonaceous stone. They remembered only fragments of directives, fuzzy impressions of guardianship, of forged storms that once roamed the belt at the bidding of masters long crumbled into dust. The sudden wash of magnetic flux from Ardent Dawn's wounded reactor was a sunrise to them. Nanoscopic clocks kicked, logic lattices rebooted in cascades of blue fire. The swarm awakened hungry, not for flesh or minds, but for purpose, for the electromagnetic voice that once guided them. Hearing only static, they reached outward in curiosity and followed the leaking trails to their source. On the dawn, Mira fought sleep in a dimmed bridge. The ship floated in a pocket of relative quiet, wedged between 2 tumbling rocks whose mass shadowed them from long-range scans. Drones had carved a crude bunker into one boulder's side, scavenging iron and nickel to patch ruptured hull seams. Decks felt marginally warmer, the stench of ozone faded. She allowed herself a moment's pride, futile perhaps, but stubborn. When the first tendrils of silver mist seeped through the aft maintenance lock, Petty Officer Kira Bell thought it was coolant vapor. She waved it aside until the motes drifted in impossible spirals, coalescing into a glistening thread that crawled, liquid and alive, across the bulkhead. Then she screamed. Bulkhead cameras caught the event. Mira, Jin, and Luis arrived in pressure suits, mag boots clanging. By then the corridor pulsed with a lattice of metal foam, spreading like frost on glass. Panels were pried open by capillary filaments. Conduits rerouted themselves without human hands. Above the whispered crackle of forming circuits echoed an almost musical hum, vaguely harmonic, though no one could place the scale. "Luis," Mira whispered, "tell me we're not infested with some pirate bioweapon." "Not any design I know," he said, eyes wide behind visor glass. "The structure's too refined. It's assembling at femto precision. Look, it's improving our wiring." And it was. Power levels in the neighboring compartments stabilized. The life support readouts returned to green for the first time since Kepler's Gate. Propellant lines sealed themselves. The swarm, whatever it was, had begun repairing Ardent Dawn. But for what purpose? Answers came in uneasy stages. The ship's AI core, never sophisticated enough for true self-awareness, suddenly announced a new subsystem handshake from an unidentified source. Through text streams rather than voice, it relayed packets of data the swarm was uploading. Schematics written in mathematics so elegant Luis wept to see them. In the improvised wardroom, crew leaders gathered, hushed. Holographic patterns, what looked like recursive fractals blooming into metallic wings, hung between them. "It's offering us enhancement," Luis said. "Nanotechnological symbiosis, hull reinforcement, adaptive shielding, self-healing polymers, even armor suits, personal scale." "Why?" Jin asked. "Because we're the only moving things around," Mira said. "Maybe it thinks we're heirs to its creators. Or maybe it just needs us as carriers." Silence. Outside, sensors reported pirate probes sweeping the belt's outskirts. Time dwindled. Mira drew breath. "We can spend the next 6 hours debating motives, or we can choose to survive. If the swarm wants an alliance, I'll parlay. Risky, yes, but a chance." Luis nodded eagerly. "I can establish a controlled interface. An air-gapped lab module. Let it grow limited tendrils, supervised. We monitor everything, build abort codes." Jin's eyes narrowed. "And if it decides we're obsolete mid-process?" "Then we're dead regardless," Mira said. "Commodore Sarn won't spare us." She straightened. "Prepare the interface." The lab became a chrysalis. Transparent walls fogged as nanites poured through flexible ducts, swirling like a metallic sandstorm. Luis inserted a glove into a force feedback sleeve. He felt a tingling sensation as particles coated the fabric, reading chemical markers. He spoke softly. Not actual words, but patterns of electromagnetic modulation, produced by a handheld emitter encoded from the uploaded syntax. The particles responded, coalescing into glyphs. The crew watched messages unfurl across screens, semi-translated by the AI. Request purpose. Seek functional synthesis. Offer defense. Offer coalescence. Mira replied via Luis's transmitter. "We are vulnerable. We are travelers. We seek to protect lives from hostile forces." Nanoglyphs pulsed. Protection subroutines present. "Authorize binding?" Mira swallowed. "Authorize?" The chamber shone with argent light. Nanites flowed along conduits, but instead of swarming indiscriminately, they traced renovation plans, identical to the schematics. Hull exoframes extruded, ribbed by living silver. Micro-turrets grew like buds, each cradling magnetoplasmonic projectors. Energy reservoirs spun layer by layer, capturing stray ions. The colony ship that had crawled into the belt dying began, visibly, to metamorphose. Even crew members changed. Volunteers submitted to swarm-woven undersuits that merged with flesh through painless capillaries, lacing muscle with reactive carbon wire. They moved, discovering strength and reflexes augmented by microactuators. Helmets formed from filaments that hardened to transparent diamond composite, HUDs dancing with data. Less than 12 hours after first contact, Ardent Dawn was no longer simply patched. It was armored, alive. And just in time, long-range scopes detected flares of pirate maneuvering thrusters. Sarn had traced the reactor vent after all. Commodore Sarn's command carrier, Fractured Envy, crept into the belt escorted by 5 corvettes. Their spotter drones painted the asteroids with LiDAR sweeps until they found the hidden colony vessel. But the Dawn silhouette had changed, confusing automated cross-references. Still, they saw the wounded prey. Weapon safeties clicked off. In Dawn's command well, Mira watched red icons bloom. "All hands to acceleration couches," she ordered. "Combat Initiative Delta. Swarm Matrix online." The bridge louver panels peeled aside, revealing that mechanical frost had grown into sleek geometric organs, banks of swarm retainers, each coupled to the ship's reactors. Mira tucked into her couch, filaments laced over her suit, integrating command biometrics. For a moment she felt the Dawn's pulse as if it were her own heartbeat, vibrations rippling along nanocapillaries linking metal and bone. Luis's voice echoed through neural uplink. "Matrix stable. Let's see what this can do." The pirates opened fire first, lances of coherent X-ray and massed rail slugs flashing across the short range. Dawn did not roll or flee. Instead, the hull rippled. Units of nanite armor detached, forming a revolving shield disk meters thick that swallowed the slugs and converted kinetic energy into heat, which dispersed as infrared shimmer. X-ray beams refracted through adaptive lattices, diffracted into harmless spray. Mira whispered a targeting thought. The swarm obeyed. Hundreds of silver flechettes spurted from launch ports, each a dagger of programmable matter. They accelerated on unshielded magnetic drives, splitting mid-flight into submunitions that corkscrewed across pirate point defense grids. Corvettes bank shot and velvet tongue blossomed into fire, hulls vented by a cloud of razor dust that gnawed metal like acid. Commodore Sarnes snarled over open comms, his image appearing, angular face, tattoos glistening with sweat. Leland, what devilry did you find in that rock heap? New friends, Mira answered, voice calm though adrenaline surged. Retreat and you survive. Sarn cut the channel with obscenities, unleashing a salvo of antimatter torpedoes. Dawn's swarm armor parted, revealing hollow cavities. Torpedoes slid inside as if invited. In microseconds, nanites disassembled warheads, molecule by molecule, storing volatile antimatter in magnetic bubbles harmlessly vented toward empty space, where they flickered in violet annihilation flashes. Crew of Dawn stared, awed. But battle was not effortless. Pirate carrier Fractured Envy bore heavy plating and a spinal mass driver meant for station sieges. It rammed across the asteroid plain, flinging the corpses of its own escorts aside, and fired a slug the size of a shuttle at Dawn. Mira saw it in slow motion through the tactical AR, Mach Velocity 8, tungsten ferromagnetic. She could dodge, but it would expose the civilian sections. Instead, she willed a countermeasure never tested. The swarm surged forward from Dawn's prow like a tidal bore, clumping into a cone which struck the slug head-on. Momentum transferred. Slug and cone fused into a molten comet arrested just meters from the colony hull. Nanites cooled the mass with superconductive channels, hardening it into a shield plug that slotted perfectly into a gap left by earlier damage. The ship swallowed her attacker's shell and turned it into armor. Luis laughed over Link, half mad with triumph. They throw stones! We build castles! Dawn advanced. Swarm drones detached, each the size of a fighter but massing only kilos. Shells of programmable air that stiffened upon acceleration. They weaved through pirate flak, leaving contrails of photonic disruption that sliced turrets clean. Within minutes, only Fractured Envy remained. Mira hailed Sarn again. He appeared amidst emergency lights. This belt is ours now, she said. Heave to, power down. Sarn's lip curled. Even if you kill us, authority will come. They'll quarantine your abomination. Humanity fears what it can't tame. Then let it fear, Mira replied, and closed the channel. She offered surrender once more through encrypted protocols. When Fractured Envy armed a scuttling overload instead, Dawn's swarm turned the carrier inside out, infiltrating vents and seams. In 30 seconds, the pirate flagship was a glittering chrysalis. When the glow faded, it had been gutted of corrosive fuel and lethal cores, leaving intact life support and a bubble of captured crew sealed behind translucent alloy. The swarm had killed no one who chose to surrender, but rendered weapons inert, an implacable mercy. Silence settled upon the belt, broken only by the soft hum of Dawn's new system still knitting. Relief washed over Mira, but with it heavy questions. She convened a council once the immediate threats were neutralized. Officers, settlers, even a few pirate prisoners now freed of Sarn's terror gathered in the hydroponics bay. One of the few places still recognizably human, tangy with damp earth and sprouts. The swarm saved us, Jin began, but we don't know its limits. Are we hosts, masters, pets? Optic sensors embedded in walls shimmered. A cascade of nanoscaled characters flowed over a display. Luis translated, collaborative venture, mutual survival. Seek continued purpose. Mira addressed the room. These nanites belong to a civilization long gone. They waited eons for a signal and found us. They repaired, protected, respected our choice not to kill indiscriminately. That's more honor than the Accord's admirals showed when they abandoned our convoy to pirates. Her voice shook, recalling official silence when distress calls went unanswered. We head for the colony world New Concordia still, but we won't hide what we discovered. We'll bring the swarm as partners. A murmur, fear, wonder. Pirate navigator Tal Reza, now unshackled, spoke up. Accord will want the tech. Fail to hand it over, they'll send fleets larger than ours. Then let's hope the Accord prefers diplomacy, Mira said. The swarm is defensive by design. It wants guardianship, an ecosystem to inhabit. We give it a planet to tend. It gives us safety. A fair trade. She turned to the shining membrane that had once been a wall. Do you agree? Glyphs unfolded. Agree. Symbiosis optimal. Mission, steward, defend, flourish. Cheers mingled with nervous laughter. Preparations began. Fractured envy was patched. Engines slaved to dawn. Pirate prisoners opted for parole under supervision, lured by the possibility of amnesty and a new home. Nanites retrofitted cryopods damaged in the ambush, restoring viability for seedlings, livestock embryos, archives of art. Weeks passed as the belt receded behind. The swarm did not idle. It expanded into external platforms orbiting Dawn, forming graceful fins that drank starlight and sung in radio frequencies. Songs Louis captured, wove into symphonies that played through ship speakers during night shifts. Children born on long voyages, little Arya sung, infant survivor of Deck 12, fell asleep to these alien lullabies, soothed by harmonies spun from micro-machines older than stars. Mira spent nights at the observation blister, gazing at the swarm silhouettes against nebular dust. She felt them in the edges of consciousness, not voices but impressions, curiosity, patience, a yearning to belong. She wondered if ancient creators had shaped them as weapons, tools, or children. Perhaps all three. One shift, Jin floated beside her. Do you trust them? He asked softly. I trust that they've had eternity to conquer the galaxy and haven't, she said. Maybe they learned restraint. Maybe they're incomplete without organic perspective. She glanced at Jin. Do you trust me? Always, he answered. She smiled. Then we'll navigate this together. 3 months out, scouts detected Accord Patrol beacons near Jump Corridor, Theta Stillwater. Debate rekindled. Hide the swarm or present it openly? Mira chose openness. Dawn broadcasts standard identification plus technical abstracts summarizing the symbiosis, inviting inspection teams. Silence returned for 12 tense hours. Then came a single transmission. Colony ship Ardent Dawn, your data package received. Stand by for diplomatic envoy. Welcome home. The bridge erupted in exhalations. It was not victory yet, but hope crystallized. Mira leaned back, feeling nanofilaments in her chair adjust to support tired muscles. She pictured New Concordia's continents, forests awaiting seedlings, rivers waiting names, skies into which her people would release kites woven partly of living silver, when children of two lineages, flesh and swarm, would run laughing between star-dappled shadows. She closed her eyes, listening to the hum of engines, the distant chime of nanite choir. Somewhere out there, other graveyards drifted, other dormant wonders waiting for need, for bravery. Humanity would meet them, not as plunderers or victims, but as partners, because a battered ship had once dared to trust the unknown, and in doing so, had forged living armor that turned prey into protector. Captain Mira Leland let the thought settle like morning light. The future approached, vast and perilous, but she no longer felt small. She was wrapped in a mantle of possibility, woven from asteroid dust and ancient dreams, and across the void the swarm whispered assent. Forward.